Good day and welcome to this first of a three-part series webinars on the Omni CBR. I'm Charene Nortier from the Conduct of Business Supervision Division. With me today, I have two people who have been very involved in the development and the progress of the Omni CBR. And I'm delighted to introduce you to Juanita Smit, also from Conduct of Business Supervision. Morning, Juanita.
Morning, Charene. Morning, everyone.
And Johann van der Lith from the Regulatory Frameworks Division. Johann, very welcome and thank you for participating.
Good morning, Charene. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. As I said, this is the first of a three-part series webinar, and in this webinar, we're going to be doing two things. We're going to give you an overview of why we've decided to develop the Omni CBR and the journey to date, because this is not an overnight activity. This is an activity that has taken a lot of progress to date. So Juanita's going to explain to us where this came from and where we currently are and what we intend to achieve in the future. And Johann's going to be talking about the legal backing for the Omni CBR. So where does the legislative imperatives come from to ask these questions and follow the specific format that we are doing? Right at the end of this session, Juanita is going to take us through the Omni CBR so that you start getting a glimpse of the draft that we will be publishing for comment a little bit later. Our next two webinars in this three-part series is going to be concentrating on what the questions are all about and why are we asking specific questions, as well as give you guidelines as to how we want you to respond to the session. The aim of these webinars is to get you, the viewer, to understand what it is all about, where it comes from, and what do we intend to achieve with it, as well as the timelines going forward. Because all of these, I know, are burning questions that you have. Without any further ado, Juanita, can I hand over to you and ask you to take us through the why and the what of the Omni CBR?
Thank you, Charene, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, it's indeed, like you said, this is not an overnight exercise that we did at all. It has taken quite a few years to get where we are. As you touched on it, the purpose of this webinar is really just to give you that background, to inform you how we want to roll out it to industry, because it is a different approach than anything else that we've done before. Although we've previously published documents and we asked for comments and we've had workshops, the same as what we did with the Insurance CBR, with the Omni CBR, we're going to do a much more robust consultation process, because we do recognize the fact that this is a huge development across various sectors in the industry. It is a new concept to a lot of entities in the industry because it is a market conduct return. Although prudential indicators can also show you market conduct risks, and there are some prudential indicators that we use here, but to a different level, to the level of products, you need to understand exactly what is the risk in each sector and then obtain the information. And that is why we want to have this robust discussions with industry. That's also why we didn't publish in December already. We reworked the whole roadmap that will be published with the draft Omni CBR to also give you an idea there about what it is that we expect from entities and how many consultation processes, workshops we'll be having, and also the opportunity for entities to engage with us individually, because we don't just want feedback from the bigger entities or from industry bodies, although that's also always been very valuable. But we also want to give an opportunity to the smaller entities to come to us, speak to us about the different ways of submitting, about the information, about alternatives that they want to suggest. Because I think that's also important to note is in this consultation process that I'll take you through, in the engagement plan that we have, we are inviting players in the market to come to us with questions and proposals and have these type of discussions with us. In these webinars and with the publishing of the documents, you will understand what it is that we expect and why we expect it. And then we want to invite you to come back to feedback with us before there is a formal written comments process, which we'll also follow and also take everything into consideration. But this is how we're doing it a little bit different this time around. So to give you an overview of the CBR will happen in this webinar, like Charene indicated, but it's really a very high level. It's just to give you that glimpse, like she said. The other two webinars goes into much more detail regarding the questions and what we're thinking about the questions. So the items that we will cover in this one, we already touched on, so I'm not going to take you through this slide step by step. We'll go through to the purpose. Why did we develop the Omni CBR? Why are we passionate about it? Why do we believe this will really enhance the way that we supervise and that it will also assist us in being more proactive, being more preemptive, protecting customers more across the financial sector, but also helping institutions like yourselves in trying to identify what are the market conduct indicators that I should be looking at and tracking at. This is not a tick box exercise at all. It's not a let's fill in a compliance report and submit it. It's not we're going to have 500 other reports to submit. We really try to take, and that's why we also stopped the compliance report even 2-3 years back, is we took what are the risks of each sector. And then we worked it into this one return that all the entities will be completing. So in the return, we will then have the information on an individual level, on an entity level, and we'll be able to compare your results from quarter to quarter. We will also have it in your specific sector, so we can do peer reviews on it, but then we will also see it as a group perspective and see whether the group is aligned in terms of their strategy, their target market, the products they're focusing on, the distribution channels that they're using. And yes, it seems very overwhelming now, but the return can be customized to work for your institution. So you will only be completing information that is applicable to you. So yes, the purpose is for us to get this cross-sectoral reporting done on our key conduct indicators, and there are many more that we want to include in future. So for some sectors, this is a lighter version, and that is something that we need to keep in mind. We did take proportionality into consideration. For a sector like the insurance industry, for instance, this will be a second phase for you. We will be going down into a bit more detail on information that we've been indicating for the last 3 years in our engagements is the type of information and data that we expect from you. But then for other sectors like the banks, this is the first conduct of business return that you will be completing, and the co-ops and the smaller intermediaries. And we took that into consideration when we looked at the level to which the questions will be going, how big the return would be, and really try to focus only on the main key risks in those areas and where we know the information and the data that we need is necessary for us to also pick up trends in the industry across. So we will be preemptive in monitoring this and looking that there's fair customer outcomes and that it's embedded across the sectors. This allows us also to have meaningful and comparable data, and this is something I know industry has been asking for a very long time, is we need benchmarking. We need benchmarking in the different sectors. We need to give feedback to industry so that you can look at your institution and say whether you are an outlier in a good way or in a bad way. So for that to happen, we do need a basis to actually do this comparison from, to see where there's outliers, to start getting information, to do benchmarking and give that feedback. That will also help us to pick up any systemic trends that we need to analyze. And all of this will assist us in trying to have a stronger, better supervisory and regulatory approach. With the information that we will be getting on a regular basis and updating our systems with, because you'll see there's quite a lot of information we ask about the entity as well. We're hoping to take the burden away of various returns and various requests to update, update information on. And then when we do approach you as an entity or as a sector, or we make changes to legislation, we already have that evidence-based data that has actually supported our insights. And although that is what we've done in the past as well, we had to do that through a lot of thematic reviews, through a lot of questioning of entities on an individual level. And it takes a long time then for a change to happen. Now we will have it at hand. And that is what will improve our view of the entire industry. And this is why this is one of the most important off-site monitoring tools that we will use. It is, however, important to realize this is not the only thing that we will use to supervise. It's also not the only thing that we will use to flag that there might be a trend or that there might be a concern. Apologies for that there might be a concern in an industry. This is just one of the tools that we'll be using, but it is a strong backbone to our supervisory framework. So the scope of the Omni CBR is what you'll see on this slide, and that shows you all the entities, or all the sectors rather, that is included and will be submitting the return to us. Now, when we talk about submitting the return, I know that the insurers are well aware that we expect the return to be on a quarterly basis. The quarterly basis is on a calendar year, and it's within a month after the end of each calendar quarter. The reason why we work with calendar quarters is that makes it possible to actually compare the data. And you have it for the same periods, no matter where the year ends are, and you can do that exercise across the sector. It is our thinking that with the Omni CBR, the first year would probably be an biannual return to give entities enough time to build the systems to actually give the reports that they need to complete the Omni CBR, and thereafter go into a more regular basis of submitting it on a quarterly basis. This is also one of the things that we will be discussing in the workshops with industries and trying to see how possible that is and how long the phase-in period should really be. The information we are asking in the Omni CBR, I do want to emphasize, there's not one question in there that we will not be using. It's not going into a big black hole. We need that information to get the fuller picture. There are some questions that you might feel you're answering on another return somewhere, maybe a prudential return, but you will note, and that's what we're going to try through these webinars and explain to you, but we're asking it at a different level because we're coming from a market conduct perspective, and we need to understand it at that level. So, like I said, for a lot of these sectors, this is a whole new concept. It's a whole new return. We do believe that you have the information that we are requesting. You might just not have it in the reports yet or draw it on a regular basis. But again, that's why, and it's one of the things in the webinars that we also want to emphasize and show you, is how this return should actually be something that you do on a monthly basis for your own entity, because it will add value to how you run your business, how you identify your risks, and to your bottom line. This is one time where compliance will actively add to the bottom line, although it is going to be a bit of a long process to get it at the level that we want it, where it's complete and accurate information that we receive. So if we look at the timeline of developments, just to give some reassurance that it didn't happen overnight. So we developed the Insurance CBR, and that took a few years of development. The idea actually started already in 2011, and then we started with consultation processes, and then we kicked off the CBR with a phase-in period as well. The first returns were due in June 2017, and with the phase-in period stopped in February 2020. So it was a bit of a longer period. We also then took out some of the questions through consultation that the industry wasn't ready to answer yet, which you'll now see is actually in the insurance Omni CBR, but we've also learned a lot of things in the whole process of how we developed and rolled out the insurance CBR, and that is what we're taking forward in how we are developing and rolling out the Omni CBR to the various sectors. Now, since 2020, we've been doing research, international research, on other returns in other jurisdictions, on what type of market conduct indicators are they using, how are they reporting it, how regularly are they reporting it, what are the risks that we see in our own industry, because I also know that a lot of the times we get the feedback, but we have to make it customized for South Africa, and we have to make it work for South African entities, and we have to keep in mind what are the limitations and the obstacles that our institutions are struggling with. And that is when we started taking all of this information together. Now, I can tell you we haven't found a return like this that includes all the sectors and have the baseline and have all these market conduct indicators, but we did leverage a lot of consultation with the World Bank, with the CGAP team of the World Bank, to also look at inclusion questions, to look at how we can benchmark this, how we can be more proactive. We've learned a lot from other regulators. Obviously, you would know the Bank of Ireland, the FCA, also from the Australian government or regulators, and we used what we could, what we think is applicable to us, and also what we've learned from the past. Now we're at the point where we can publish the Omni CBR and we can start having the discussions about it. But yes, it's been a very long process to get to where we are. So if we look at all the work that was done, I touched a bit on it in the previous slides, so I won't go into too much detail here, but again, we did recognize that there's different levels of data and maturity in the different sectors. We also realized the big systematic impact that this will have and how much resources are needed, not just on the industry side, but also on the FSCA side. Because again, we want to reassure you that the information that we are receiving is not going to go into a big black hole. We're not just asking it for the sake of asking it. It's also not a tick box exercise on our side. We are actively using and analyzing even the insurance data currently and giving feedback on an individual basis to insurers. And the same thinking will be behind the Omni CBR. And when we are comfortable at a stage after the phase-in stage that the information that we're getting is true and complete and reliable, that is when we'll start giving more feedback to the industry as a whole, not just to one sector or just to one individual, but more to the industry. And that is why we need that robust industry engagement. I already touched on possible duplicating of reporting and why that might be the case, but hopefully after watching the 3 webinars, you'll be able to see why we ask what we ask at the level that we're asking, and that there is actually no duplication, and that yes, we can source information from other regulators that you submit on other returns, but it wouldn't be the indicator we need for the market conduct risk we've identified. And like I said, we did a lot of internal collaboration at the FSCA when developing the Omni CBR. There was a lot of workshops, a lot of debates. It was especially difficult to get the baseline questions that we want to ask across all the sectors, that we want all the entities to answer, because it's risks that we've identified in all the sectors separately that we know we need to see as a whole. If we want to ensure financial stability, we need to see the bigger picture. And this is also where we then want to start tracking in groups from a market conduct perspective and not just from a prudential perspective. The baseline questions that I'm referring to is the questions that you will see is on the all sheets within the Omni CBR. If there's anything there that's not applicable to your entity, you will just complete it with a 0. But then we know that you did look at it and that you did consider it and that it's not applicable to you, and that is possible. Now you might also be saying that we have so much work that we're doing at the FSCA as an authority. We have so many things that roll out. There's so many things that you give comments on, that you gave comments on in the past. How does this fit into everything? So the Omni CBR is aligned to the COFI framework. We looked at what we're expecting there currently, although it's not final, and worked it into the Omni CBR. It will inform some of the standards that we want to bring out under COFI in the future. And it is also linked to what we're already expecting from you in current legislation. So for the different sectors, the type of reporting, the type of data that we are currently expecting you to have is what we'll also be testing in the Omni CBR. So nothing that you've done up to now is going to go to waste, if I can put it that way. You're going to only enhance it and use it even more in the Omni CBR, and the Omni CBR is something that is going to be built on going forward, and it will be annually reviewed after it's final and it's embedded in everyone's processes and systems. We will review it, and it's a living document where if you see new risks from an authority point of view, we will start including different questions. If there's something that's not that material anymore, it might change. It won't be a volatile return, don't get me wrong, but it will be a living document, and it will be suitable for the different industries. The last bit on this slide just gives you again an idea of all the international research we did, all the considerations we took into that we thought about when looking at the return, also the workshops that we held. We had a lot of workshops with international bodies, even Deloitte in the UK, where they're starting to build a system on outsourcing and what type of information do they want in the central system? How do you deal with that information to still make sure that you can use it, but that you don't take the competitive edge away or disclose any confidential information? So there was a lot of consultation that took place here. And then on the next slide, we're touching on what we already signaled in our notification in December last year about there will be a roadmap explaining the rollout and the implementation plan of the Omni CBR, how we want to engage with industry. I also touched on it a little bit earlier in this webinar. So you will see the draft Omni CBR. The draft will be an Excel sheet. The Excel sheet will have some functionality to it so that you can see how you can customize it. It will, however, not be in that format when the final one comes out and you have to submit it. There will be two ways of submitting it. You can either submit it in an XML basis. For the bigger companies and the bigger groups, it might be much easier to do it that way. And we will allow time for building. And we also have a whole second cycle of consultation that will just happen on how do we implement it and what is the system changes needed. The first round of workshops will be on contents, and it will be on what are we asking, why are we asking, and you telling us about other ways to get the same answer, but maybe using a different indicator which is more known in your sector. And then after some changes, we'll publish again, and then we'll look at exactly how will we implement it. We'll have some explanatory guidance also in a document over and above the webinars that we have. We'll also again explain some of the research that we've done and the thinking behind some of the questions and why we target certain sectors in it. Thank you, Charene.
Thank you very much, Juanita. That was a very comprehensive overview of the journey that we've taken to date. And as you've very clearly explained to people, it is a very long journey. There's been a lot of internal consultation and a lot of collaboration with external role players such as the World Bank. And I was party to some of those workshops, and I can confirm that they were intense and there were a lot of debates, especially trying to get the questions that would make sense to people from different industries. And as we work through the webinars and the workshops that will be coming, because there will also be interactive workshops in this consultation process, I hope that people will take up the opportunity to discuss this, to think about it, and to think about what it will mean for their business. And as you've said, people don't always think of a compliance tool such as this as a tool that they can also use for the benefit of their own business. But as a result of the in-depth questions that we are hoping to be able to ask the industry should also start questioning what they do, why they do it, and whether they're getting the best possible business results. So it's also a business improvement tool. On that note, Johann, one of the questions that we often get asked when we issue tools of different kinds, regulatory tools, is what is the legal basis for asking this? Must I do it? And what can happen if I don't ask it? Do you actually have a framework? So could you talk us through the legal framework, please?
Yes, I can indeed, Charene. I'm happy to be part of this project. It's a very exciting project. The answer to that question is that Omni CBR is intended to facilitate streamlined cross-sectoral regulatory reporting. Like Juanita said, then it builds on this market conduct return that's already in the insurance space at the moment. So there are more sectors. Juanita did set out that sectors. I'll just repeat that again, that it's now included over and above the insurers. So it now includes also banks, investment providers, financial services providers, cooperative financial institutions, and then retirement funds and retirement fund benefit administrators. So you can see that the scope is very wide to include all those different sectors. So in terms of powers, the FSCA has a wide range of powers under the Financial Sector Regulation Act, and that is Act number 9 of 2017. But there's also various sectoral laws that provides the powers to gather information and require reporting by financial institutions. For the transitional period, it is envisaged that Section 131 of the Financial Sector Regulation Act will be relied on, and that makes provision for to perform its functions and then gather information to assist in performing those functions in terms of the financial sector laws. A request in terms of this Section 131, the request to gather information is legally enforceable, and that means that it must be complied with by regulated financial institutions. So the development of the Omni CBR reporting requirements must also be considered against the backdrop of the future regulatory framework. So it was mentioned, COFI, that's a Conduct of Financial Institution bill, is underway, and that will comprehensively enable the FSCA to determine regulatory returns for supervisory purposes. The information that a financial institution must provide will be determined by the FSCA, and that will be by notice on the website. And such a determination may set out not only the medium and the form, but also the manner and the frequency of the requisite reporting. So practically, this would be done after the full consultation and transition period alluded to in the Omni CBR and by Juanita on some of those earlier slides. So I hope that answers the question, Charene.
Thank you, Johann. That was very comprehensive. And I appreciate the fact that you're not only talking about the current overarching legislation, but also about the future legislation. And
Yes.
It gives people an idea of positioning of where the return itself sits within the legislative framework that mandates what we do and why we do things. Juanita, I'm going to go back to you and ask you to please talk to us about the rollout plan. We mentioned the rollout plan earlier. You've alluded to the fact that we're now in 2022 and that we are now in the last 3-year phase of implementation before it becomes fully implemented. So what does this look like? What can we expect?
Thank you, Charene. Yeah, let me come in here before Johann continues with the questions around the POPI Act, because I know we're going to get questions in the workshops about that too. So maybe just to give some comfort and seeing how it works with COFI, we don't expect that there will be final, complete and true reporting on the return before 2026. If we go through the rollout plan, which I think in the next slide I'll go into a little bit more detail about exactly how we envisage it and what is the detailed parts in phase 1, but there's 4 phases to the rollout plan of the Omni CBR, and the timing of it actually works well with when we expect COFI to come into full operation. It works well with current legislation, but it also works well with other projects that we're busy doing with other regulators. And that will include projects about data taxonomy. I know a lot of the sectors is aware that there's a big project between the regulators where we're actually trying to find one definition for if we ask this question in a return and we refer to this term, what does that mean? And it means the same thing across the returns that we're asking for. So almost like an industry dictionary for completing returns. So we've taken part in that project as well and gave our inputs. And what would be really great about this is the fact that we're publishing the Omni CBR with the terminology now and expecting comments and feedback on that, which we can gain feedback into that project before they publish the end of the year to get further feedback across the industry. So we can almost influence it a little bit and get closer to where industry wants it to be before it's published from the PA side for further consultation. So it feeds into that project. It feeds into the harmonization projects that we're busy with in trying to find joint standards that will be under COFI. And how we can align the different expectations from the different sectors and how that will feed into each other. It also feeds into a bigger project where we're busy with unique identifiers. So when we want to track a group or an entity, what are the unique identifiers that we can get from the information we're already asking, and what more do we need to ask to actually then feed into that project and get the bigger picture from all authorities, so that all authorities, the FIC, the PA, Treasury, all authorities can see this entity as part of a group. And this is the systemic risk that it might have, or this is where the group is moving towards, and we can also do some more predictive analysis on the information that we're having. So it feeds into bigger projects as well, which will affect the entire industry, and that's why it's important to note that Omni CBR is also for the industry, and it will actually expand into other sectors in future also to get this type of information. So nothing, like I said again previously in the webinar, nothing is wasted. Everything that you've done up to now, we're going to use in this process going forward. But I do know that there's always a concern about what about legislation that we're not looking at, and the POPIA Act is definitely one of the things that's always a question. Can we ask this question as an authority? And I think that is where Johann needs to come in.
Thank you. So in terms of POPIA, the Protection of Personal Information Act, it's a very topical question, because as Juanita said, the information on Omni CBR is very granular. So to answer that question about POPI, POPI gives a juristic person the right to the protection of its personal information in much the same way as it does to a natural person. So the FSCA has a legal mandate in terms of the Financial Sector Regulation Act that I alluded to earlier, to regulate and supervise the conduct of financial institutions in accordance with relevant financial sector laws, as is defined in the Financial Sector Regulation Act. So for the FSCA to achieve its legislative objectives, we need to collect what is technically constitutes personal information as defined in the POPI Act from these regulated entities. But this information collected will always be protected as private and confidential, and only be used for the purposes for which it was collected. And those purposes for which the information is collected from the Omni CBR specifically will include monitoring financial sector trends and emerging market conduct risks, supervising the business conduct of financial institutions which are regulated by the FSCA, and also monitoring compliance with and also relevant identifiers for possible contravention of financial sector law. So those are the purposes for which the information will be collected. Thank you.
Thank you, Johann. And it's very clear that we're not going to be abusing the information that we have. And then when we are looking at trends, it's going to be at a general level, but on an individual level, we will also be using the information for the supervision of that specific entity. So people will be aware that we are using the information at two separate levels. But at one level, it's personal to that person, that juristic person, or the natural person, as the case may be, because in the financial services provider environment, we do have natural persons with a license as well. But then at a trend level, it's almost sanitized of the individual company's details, but it provides us with a trend as to, in general, large companies face the following challenges, and in other instances, smaller companies may face the following challenges. So there it's more about what the industry is experiencing rather than the individual company's experiences. Juanita, thank you very much for that, and Johann, for your detail. If we look back at the rollout plan, you've got some very specific dates and expectations here. Can you talk us through it?
Thanks, Charene. I almost think this is the slide everyone was waiting for up to now in the webinar, since they knew it was coming. So phase one is the consultation on the terminology and the data requirements. Remember, like I said earlier in the webinar, we have two separate consultation processes that we have in the different phases. The second consultation process will be about systems and operational impact. But in phase one, it's the webinars explaining the Omni CBR and the rollout plan and all the documents we will be publishing. And then it is the industry workshops. We're having the workshops per sector, so separately. We can cater for up to 20,000 people, so everyone can join the workshops, but they'll have to indicate if you want to actually participate and you do want to come with questions and suggestions. Then you'll have to indicate it when we send out the invitation to actually say you want to participate, because we can only have 1,000 people participating. But I think it happens usually in these workshops, you only have a few people that come with questions and suggestions, and the others, again, learn from that and think about that. And that's why we'll also open the opportunity for written comments, and we'll open an opportunity for individual engagements as well as part of phase one. The timelines for phase one is actually on the next slide, and I maybe just want to jump there to give you an idea. So this is more details for phase one, is the publishing will happen now in May. We will have the workshops per sector in June and July. The invites will go out. And again, we want entities to come to us and present to us and have discussions with us. We are now presenting to you and we're explaining to you. You need to digest all of that and then indicate whether you want to come back or just join the workshops and see what type of discussions are going on, because it might inform changes then in future, and then you know what was the thinking behind that. In August to October this year, we are going to collate all the written comments and everything that we got from the workshops, review it, have our robust internal discussions, because yes, if there is questions that are going to be affected, and I'm sure there will be on the old sheets, it is the different departments within the authority that they need to come to a point where we agree what will we ask and how will we ask, and still get the information that we need as a baseline for comparison. So that will happen in that period. And then we will also still engage internally and externally with commentators if needed. Sometimes we get comments back and we're not able to really understand what someone is saying on the written comments. And then we need to have those engagements to really see that we understand what is being said, or even if it was raised in a workshop. And I know that there's already been quite a few entities that indicated they really want to partake in this process. They want to come in, they want to give comments, they want us to understand why certain things can't happen the way that it's happening, or what we're expecting. And that's what will happen from October to December to get full clarity. So if we make any amendments to the Omni CBR, that it is very well informed amendments that we make to it, and that we as the authority understand why we need to make it, and that we will still get what we need to get from the Omni CBR, because that's also important. So, and then we will publish the updated Omni CBR in December for everyone to digest while they're on holiday. We're hoping that industries are in a better mood in December, and then they can look at the document again while, you know, sipping on a cocktail, looking at the ocean, that type of thing. Then phase 2 will start, where we're actually doing we're inviting entities to take part in a pilot project. So where you take the amended Omni CBR that we then published and you actually try and implement it in your business. You won't have to be able to report on it 100%. We just want to see what are the obstacles with implementing what we have now. Where do we need extra time? If you are a certain type of entity, why would it be difficult for you to obtain information through systems, that type of thing? What is the true operational impact here? I think even in phase 2, it might even happen in phase 1 as well, that a lot of the service providers that are assisting the entities would like to give feedback. I think especially in phase 2 though. And we need to make sure that it aligns to our systems within the FSCA, and our transformation developments, and how we're going to use the data, how we're going to draw reports from it and build our databases. Because again, it's not just coming in. We need to actually have the capacity to deal with that information and get it out again to the supervisors to deal with the entities, and later on then the reporting. By then, we also need to look at what else happened in the COFI development, what happened with other harmonization projects, what was other feedback that we received, and that we need to take into consideration in the phase 2 part. Phase 3 is where, after taking all of this into consideration, having the pilot project, having our own IT development happening on our side, looking at what needs to change, there's the possibility that another amended Omni CBR will then be published based on that. And then the transitional reporting period will happen. The transitional reporting period is on a best effort basis. So it means that you report on what you can report, and we want to see improvement from the one report to the next report. That's something that we'll track from our side. You need to build the systems. You'll already then have an idea about what we're asking. After the publishing of the Omni CBR now in May, you'll have a very strong idea about what are the things that we're asking. What are the things that you know because of engagements with us that will probably not change, because this is basic information and data that we need you to have to run your business, to make sure that you're solvent, to make sure that you know who your customers are, to make sure that you're accessible to the customers. So certain things you'll already be able to flag. We're asking this, we've always asked this, we're going to ask this, and you can start building your systems. So that's why we think a 2-year transitional reporting period would be enough. It could also be that we have different transitional or phasing in periods for different sectors. What this means is, for instance, again, I'll use the insurance industry, not just because they're close to my heart because I work in the insurance industry, but also because I've had the CBR already. So This is a phase 2 for them. And like I said, in our engagements with them in the last 3 years, these are the type of questions that we've been asking them. And a lot of the answers we've been getting informed actually the changes to the Omni CBR. So their phasing period might be a shorter phasing period than an industry like the 13B administrators and the retirement funds that have never had this type of reporting. They need to build their systems to report in this way from almost scratch, if you can say. Sometimes it's just amendments because you anyway reported on some of it, but sometimes there is reports that need to be built from scratch and you'll need a longer phasing period. After the transitional reporting, and that's why I said in phase 4, which we only think will be in 2026, which links up to what Johann said about how we think COFI will be coming together, how the standards that we want under COFI will be informed by the information we're getting from this return, amongst other things. That is when we, in phase 4, want to go into a steady state. That's when we want the reporting to be final. We want you to have accurate reporting, correct reporting. We want to be able to draw more accurate reports from it and then start seeing the benchmarking exercises being done. Of course, we'll never give any feedback back into industry where we actually publish anything with names of entities. It will be anonymous and very aggregated to start off with. Maybe many years in the future, we'll look at doing more individual reporting, but definitely not at this stage. But that would be phase 4. So this is really a gradual rollout plan with a lot of consultation and giving all entities an opportunity to consult with us, come to us, whether it's in the workshops, whether it's individual, or whether it's just giving the comments. The comments will also, the written comments will also be done in a different way. With this project. It's the first time we're going to do it this way, but it's also the way that we'll be doing it going forward, where we have a portal on our website, actually for comments, and any person or entity can register there. So it's not just registered entities, the industry bodies can register there. Like I said, some of the service providers, if you have constructive feedback to give, you can register there. And the template is web-based for the comments. And you will be completing it. You can go in and out as many times as you want. Different people can have access to it as long as the first user actually approves the other users to give feedback for your entity or for your sector. And then you will submit those comments to us then via the web. And the reason why we're doing it that way, it just allows us a way of quicker analyzing what is the comments that we're getting back, not working through 100 Excel sheets or Word documents, copying and pasting, trying to pick up trends. I mean, we also have to move with the times. So that is why the written comments will be a little bit different, but it's a normal Word-based, web-based document that you will be completing, but it's also split into the different sections and sectors in the Omni CBR, so you will only comment on what you want to comment on. So that is the overall rollout plan and the immediate steps that we have for phase 1 that I touched on. If we now get to the look and feel of the return. So this is a more exciting side because now we can also show you the return that we've been working on so hard, and it was really a complete team effort. Johann, the modest one, actually thought of the name when we first thought of the Omni CBR, and he was still in the insurance department. We were thinking, what would we call this? And he actually made the joke about it should be something like an Omni CBR, and that got stuck with us. So we got inputs from everyone within the FSCA, and that is why we're very proud of the product. It looks very much like the insurance returns currently. It has the same look and feel. You can customize it for your entity, like I said. On the one that we will be publishing for comments, you'll have the terminology sheet where you'll see next to the questions is a number. That number refers back to the terminology sheet where that specific word is. We didn't define all the words in the return. About that, we must be clear, and we won't, because some of the words are already in legislation, and there is definitions in legislation, and if it's there, that is what it means. The only terms that we defined in the terminology sheet is when it's not in legislation, when it's a word that we think you need some guidance on to answer that specific question, to understand what it is that we're asking, or where it is, for instance, explained in various legislations across the sectors, and there's small nuances, but now we need one description for this word for this return. Again, going back to the data taxonomy type of project that we also had to do in-house, then we have that description, and that description is what's applicable to that word for what we want to get out of this return. So that is the terminology sheet that will also just guide you a little bit. We have an instruction sheet, except for these webinars, there is an instruction sheet showing you some basic instructions, how to work through it, how to complete it, in which format the information should be. One of the things that I've seen in the years that confuse entities the most is when we say round off to the closest 1,000 or to the nearest 1,000. We all think of how we did it at school. So if you have 999, you want to make it 1,000 because you're rounding it off, but that's not what it's meant. It's meant to bring it in line with the same way you do your prudential reporting. So you would take your number that you want to report on and actually divide it by 1,000, and that's what you would put in the cell. So when we look at it, we times it by 1,000, and it's just because we do work with very big numbers. So it's just to get them into the cells and know that everyone is reporting the same, and that we can then do trend analysis on it. But it's the little things like that that we have on the instruction sheet that is very important for you to understand and make sure that you complete the return correctly, because that is something that we're still struggling with even 4 years after reporting of the insurance industry. Then we have the company information sheet. You'll see there's a lot of questions there that we're asking because we want to update our system. We just now went through a big exercise where we asked all entities to complete their information, their contact details on our system, to update it because it's outdated, although there are some legislation and requirements for entities to update information with us. We know that's not happening all the time. And we don't want to do these type of cleanup exercises. We also need our data to be accurate and correct and have the most current contact details for all entities. And that's why we are asking some of that information. I already touched on the different ways that you will be able to submit the Omni CBR. So if you're a smaller entity or you don't want to use the XML way of submitting, you'll be able to submit on our portal, on our website. Then it is a web-based return. It will have the look and feel of the Excel sheet, and you will actually complete your information on there. You can also go in and out any way you like before submitting it. You can also give various users access to submit, because we also take note that, you know, the people that need to complete the complaint sheet is not the ones that need to complete the business composition part of the return. And different people need to be able to work on it differently. It can't go on a round robin basis and then one person submits or one person have to manually feed it in for all the other departments. So you can give access to various users, but the entity will need to give the access and need to control the access. It's your responsibility, because there is a declaration where you're signing off on the information saying that this is accurate and complete and it's for your entity. Then we have much more validations that we can do now. So the validations aren't built into the Excel sheet, not for purposes of giving comments, but we do have validations, whether you're going to submit on XML or whether you're going to submit it on a web base, to make sure that some of the information we can already pick up is not accurate, or the way that you're submitting it. Also, you can't leave one cell blank. So that's why I said if it's not applicable to you, you'll put in a 0, but if you leave anything blank, you won't be able to submit it. As previously indicated, we have the all sheets. Now, the all sheets is what all sectors will need to complete, all entities and all sectors. It's about business composition, the movement of money, conflict of interest, additional benefits, compliance, and governance. And in the other webinars, we're actually going to take you through these sheets, explain what it is that we're asking. We'll also there explain a bit more about what do we mean with retail and with business, and why did we choose this market segmentation. And then each sector will have their own specific sheets that is just for that sector. And the reason for this is, I think it's actually very obvious, but it is that there are some particular risks that are associated with that sector that we won't be able to pick up on a baseline question. There are certain information that we need from that sector, or that sector has, which other sectors won't have, that we need to do our trend analysis on, and also have meaningful engagements with the entities in that sector. And that is also what one of the webinars will then be about, is just about those additional sheets, the additional information that we want from that particular sector and why we're asking it. And then the asset managers have an additional annexure that they would need to complete, which we'll also explain in that webinar. And each portfolios in the CIS space will have their own portfolio sheet to complete, because we see each portfolio as an entity on their own, and we need that level of information on that portfolio. Currently, it's already being reported. It's just not being reported directly to us in all instances, and we need to bring in all that information in-house so that we can do proper trend analysis and proper reporting and have control over that information. So that is basically the return.
So Juanita, I think by now people are really curious and they want to show us the money like they did in a famous movie a few years ago. So show us the money, please. Show us what this Omni CBR looks like.
Okay, Charene, so this is the first time we're showing it, and I'm very excited, like I said, because it took long to get here. This is the introduction sheet. So everything needs to be completed. So the entity name, your trading name, if you are in a group, your group name. We use FSCA number there. FSCA number means the number that you have. So insurers have an insurer number with us. You have pensions have a pension fund number with us. FSPs have a FSP number with us. So you'll complete your FSCA number. You'll tell us if you're an FSP, what category you are, whether you have a compliance officer or not, your type of entity that you are, and when is your year end. This is just basic information that we need. You'll also see that down here we have some basic guidelines, and we also tell you where to go to submit the information. This is the instruction sheet that I referred to, with some few basic instructions that will be applicable to all parts of the return in all sectors. This is the terminology sheet for those descriptions that we need to give to you that's maybe not in your legislation. This is the company information sheet. So here's where you actively also need to participate to actually make this return work for you. The information we're asking here under the business information section, that is the information that I refer to. We need to update our systems and make sure that, one, you complied when you needed to tell us, but two, if you didn't comply, that we still have updated information about your entity, and this feeds directly into our system. And then after completing that, you'll see we ask you to tell us whether you have retail, business, or both types of customers. Like I said, what we mean with retail and what we mean with business and why we chose that type of description will be dealt with in the webinar on the all sheets. But you will choose your type of customer there. If you are a portfolio manager, a CIS or a hedge fund, and then you'll need to complete how many portfolios you have, because that will actually then generate the number of sheets you need to complete for each portfolio. Like we said, each portfolio has their own sheet. You'll also have to tell us which sector you're from. So this is all the sectors that the return is applicable to. And then after completing all of this information, you'll have to customize. Now you'll see the moment that I chose banks, this drop down appeared that is only applicable to banks. We have split banks into traditional, foreign-owned, and neutral type of banks in level 2. So you know that you're a bank. If you say yes, you're a traditional bank, you'll go with yes there. The type of activities in level 3 are the activities that we've currently linked to the activities in the COFI Act. So this does not affect your customizing of the return at all. It doesn't come up in any of the sheets at all, but we do ask these questions now already to get you accustomed to what is the activities that we're referring to in the COFI Act. Are you actually performing those activities, and then to start getting used to reporting on those activities. So you will say what is ever applicable to you here, just for instance, and then you will customize. So when you customize, you will only get the sheets and the columns on the sheets that are applicable to you. Remember, I indicated that it is a traditional bank, so then you won't get foreign bank, mutual bank, and all of that. You'll only get what is applicable to you. So if we look at this, the banks, certain industries have further information that they need to give us. The insurers, micro-insurers, banks, the asset managers, the co-ops, all of them have further product information that they need to give us. The product information is for the additional business composition sheets, that we actually have the right columns, that we are asking questions on product level. That is applicable to you, and that is because these products might not be all the products that you offer, but it's the products where we've identified most of the risks in and where we want to pick up the trends. We also always allow for an other category. The other category is on various not just on the columns of the products, but also under questions for distribution channels, on complaints. We have other options. What's important to note, and it's on the instruction sheet as well, is wherever we ask other, you need to give us an explanation of what that means in the comment section on that sheet. So I'll show that to you now, but let's say you say, yes, I offer this product, and I offer that product, and I offer this product and another product, for instance, and I am a traditional bank, and then I customize. Okay, here's the declaration, which we said would be completed by an EXCO member or the principal officer, and them signing off on it, saying that this is the correct and true information. Then we have the all sheets, which again we'll go into on the other webinars. I just want you to kind of get the feel of it. So the all sheets you will need to have, because I said I only have retail clients, I will only get the sheets for retail clients. If I have both, I will get retail and business. And if I only have business, I'll only get the business sheets. The conflict of interest sheet, there isn't a business and a retail one for this, because it's about the entity itself and how the entity deals with its funds, what they spend it on, and where the income comes from, and the ownership of the entity, irrespective of what the clients are. So there will always just be one sheet for that. And you have your complaints and your additional and your governance sheets. But what is important is that you'll also have your banking sheet with additional banking questions that are just relating to that traditional bank, and that zooms in on that instructions that you're giving as a bank and dealing with those type of customers. So this is just a start. The other two webinars will go into much more detail, but this is to give you an idea how it is, how you would be able to customize it. When you open the return the first time, there will be over 100 tabs, and then you customize it to make it work for your entity. And we only want you to give comments for your entity and your sector that is applicable to you. Thank you, Charene.
Juanita, thank you very much for this glimpse into the future, and I hope that people are excited about this. And when we start unpacking the questions and what we're asking and why we're asking, I really sincerely hope that people will see the benefit it will give to them about understanding their own business and their own environment better as well. We do want to see this as a living document, as you've also alluded to, not only living for us as a regulator, but also a living document for the businesses. The more information you have about your business, the better you can manage it, both for the current risks and the current broader environment within which you are functioning, as well as the future environment. World is changing at a very, very fast pace. There are things that are happening that we could not envisage happening 2 years ago. I mean, if we just talk about all the things that have happened in the last 2 years already, none of us thought that that would be a reality, and almost overnight, life changed. 2 years later, many of us have adapted to that change, that now has become our new normal. So the one thing that we've also seen is that people are very adaptable and that do react very quickly to change. And I hope that that will also be true of the way that people embrace the Omni CBR. If we just recap very quickly, we are right now in the consultation process. We're at the very start of the consultation process. We have a 3-part webinar where we are talking you through the overview of the Omni CBR. We're giving you an idea of the terminology. We're giving you an idea of the kind of questions we're asking and why we're asking it. In that process, we will be publishing the actual draft Omni CBR as well. And as Juanita has said, the terminology is explained in the Omni CBR as well. So if you look at the forms and there's a term that you don't understand, chances are that we have actually explained that in the terminology sheet, because that is quite a broad and very detailed terminology approach that we have taken there. Again, because we are dealing with more than one part of the industry, we are reaching so many different parts of the industry at the same time. What we're also going to be doing during June and July is having online virtual workshops, and we're very excited that we can host 20,000 people per workshop. As Juanita said, in the workshops, we can cater for 1,000 active participants. So those are people who indicate to us that they have specific questions or comments that they would like to raise during those workshops. So the process will be watch the 3-part webinar to get an idea of what this is all about. Then you read the Omni CBR in detail and you make notes for yourself. And this is maybe where the industry associations would also want to play a role and canvass their members for what their specific questions are. Participate in the industry workshop. So we will have an industry workshop aimed just at the banks. We'll have one aimed just at the CIS manager. So we'll be quite detailed in those workshops. And then people from a specific interest group, which is defined by the industry that you are working in, will be invited to that specific workshop. In that workshop, up to 1,000 people can ask questions, they can make comments, and they can verbally participate. The other 19,000 participants will not be able to ask questions during the workshop, but after the workshop, everyone will have the opportunity to go to this web-based comment sheet that Juanita has also explained. And there, anyone, whether you actively participated or whether you were a silent participant, would be able to ask questions and make comments. And all of that will then be used in the collation of the next draft. And that next draft, we are then planning to collate during the period, and Juanita, let me not lie, August to October. And then we will be doing the final collation of the comments, and we hope to publish this by December. So we're always very, very kind, and we give you light reading material for December holidays. You don't have to spend anything on a boring novel. You've got our exciting documents to work through. And then in January, we'll go into the next phase, and then we'll start with the testing. And the testing is going to be robust and across all of the industries. So there's a very clear rollout, and this is again encapsulated in the rollout plan that will be published with the documents. Juanita and Johann, thank you so much for your time and your very detailed feedback this morning. Are there any last thoughts from your side?
Nothing from my side. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Charene.
Yes, nothing from my side. Maybe just to correct Charene, The second phase might not start in January next year. We will publish in December, but it might, we do take note that a lot of people are on leave and only return back to the office in mid-January. So probably phase 2 will only start a little bit later, but in the first quarter of next year.
Thank you, Juanita. So people can relax. They are allowed to take leave over January or December if they want to. But thank you very, very much. And I hope that you will also be watching our second and third webinars where we unpack the questions in more detail. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day and have a really good week ahead.